Hi, and welcome back to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son sit down and talk about things in fantasy fiction. I'm the son in the equation, Zach.
And I'm the dad, Jim, and it's great to have you with us again today. This is a first of its sort for us, a midweek episode as we take a look at something a little different, casting our thoughts to the wide range of fantasy, literature, and fiction, and even movies and television shows, all in this genre. And we consider fantasy more broadly than just sword and sorcery, but even considering science fiction as a kind of fantasy fiction. What our focus is on today is specifically thinking about the bad guys, the villains, the entities that haunt our nightmares from many of these different stories, and considering which one would be the baddest of the bad.
Yeah, who's the best, who's the baddest, who's worth being the bad guy.
In the tournament of evil, who would rule them all?
Now, clearly this list will be lacking, if only because so is our experience with villains. And if you find that we horribly miss one that you wish was here, maybe we'll revisit it another time. You just let us know.
I was telling Zach off air about the fact that, there are some bad guys out there that we simply haven't encountered because we haven't read it yet. I have so many books waiting to be read that I will probably die before I get through them all. There's only so much time in a day, and I do actually have to work and do other things related to life in general. I don't get to just sit and read. As much fun as that would be, I can't do nothing but. So we are limited to what we know. Even so, some of the things we'll talk about I know a little better than Zach does, and some he knows a little better than I, but we'll still try to hash it out with our collective knowledge. He's raising his eyebrows. He's like, which one do I know better than you? I think that's one of his thoughts.
Yeah, we'll see.
We will see. Honestly, we have some names on this list that we know will not be the one to rule them all, but they'll still be fun to talk about, to throw into the conversation, and we even have a few that were contributed by you, our listeners. Great, bad villains to add to the mix, and we're going to enjoy having them as part of the conversation.
So as we talk about these villains, we'll go through a number of things on each one. Their abilities, if you will, their methods or motives, and ultimately their strengths or weaknesses.
Yeah.
At which point we'll kind of rank them in association into maybe 3 different tiers to help give us a little bit structure to this.
Yeah, Zach was proposing tier 1 for the biggest and baddest. The ones we kind of feel are, wow, they'll crush them all. They are the nastiest of the nasty. Tier 2 for the ones that, yeah, wow, they're pretty bad, but no, the tier 1s would eat them for breakfast.
And tier 3 for the ones that I just kind of laugh at or make me fall asleep.
We're just giving you an attaboy for making the list. All right, first one on our list, The White Witch. C.S. Lewis's evil creation for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. What do you think of the White Witch, Zach?
I think she is definitely evil.
Oh, yes.
Definitely not a good person. However, her as a powerful villain, you kind of run into a two-sided nature on this.
Really? Two-sided nature?
I have to ask, do we talk when she's first discovered in The Magician's Nephew, or when we run into her?
Yes, because we know more about her. So we use everything, again, spoilers podcast. So we use everything we have at our fingertips and knowledge to talk about this person.
Because if I remember correctly, her name is Jadis.
Yes, the last survivor of her planet, where she basically is the one who killed everyone else. I mean, she's the last one standing of the whole planet.
She speaks the word of power that destroys everything.
This is pretty high power here.
And yet, when we turn it around and later throw her into Narnia and Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, there is a period of hundreds of years, potentially, of just pure winter. She's caused this. Everyone fears her. She takes over. She's in control. But we don't ever see that same quite god-level power.
And I believe that's because we discover her powers, and in the worlds that C.S. Lewis created, powers are relative to the world you're in. Mm-hmm. So while she had the ultimate power and was the absolute victor, if you could call it victor, when you've destroyed your world and everybody's gone and everything's dead, she was the absolute power there. She gets transplanted to the world of Narnia at the day of creation, and she doesn't have those same powers anymore. She's just this powerful being who is eternal, which is a power of its own, but she doesn't have power of the creator here. She actually runs away.
Weird question, because it's been a while since I've read.
Yeah.
Is she eternal, or does she get that later on at the garden?
Well, yes, I believe she gets that at the garden. She wouldn't be eternal originally, but she is eternal as the White Witch now.
That's a product of Narnia. And so the eternalness is not so much a power of her, but a power of Narnia.
Although she has that power now.
Fair.
And she has powerful magic, powerful dark magic when we meet her in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which we have to assume is not necessarily native to her abilities, but stuff she has learned in this world over the longevity of her lifespan.
She's adapted and changed her powers and abilities, producing more effects in line with winter, petrification, manipulation, and becomes more of a witch, really, thus earning her the title.
Now you said manipulation. That's not a magical power.
No, but it's still a very powerful tool.
I wanted to highlight that you're pointing out part of her power is not just magic. It's her personality, her ability, her knowledge, and her intellect to be able to twist people to her purposes. That's a power of its own. She gets Edmund to do some really nasty stuff without compelling him magically.
She's an incredibly charismatic, noble woman.
Evil noble, yes.
Yes.
Of course, some would say evil is all a matter of perspective.
Yeah, not C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis would say she's evil.
Right.
I mean, she does kind of kill God, kind of.
We do see her use her power to create things, magically make stuff, petrify people, create an eternal winter, keep Santa Claus out. What a power.
Apparently.
More importantly, keeps Christmas from coming. Where would we put her? What tier might you place her? Because keep in mind, she gets whooped in the end by a lion.
A powerful lion that comes back from the dead.
This is true.
Also, any of us would get whooped by a non-powerful lion.
Yes, the lion Aslan, who is actually part of the godhead of this world. So she falls to a god.
I think she's an interesting and compelling character at times, but ultimately she's an intro-level villain that our inexperienced heroes can see as a threat and then overcome.
But they don't overcome her.
No,
it takes the god power to overcome her.
They kinda do. Sure, they don't kill her or beat her, but they overcome a lot of the various things. The god power indirectly starts thawing out her winter when they get there.
If Aslan is not there, do they still win? Or does she win? I think she wins.
Well,
they needed some Deus Ex Machina here. They totally did.
You get into a little bit of a problem of if Aslan's not there, Narnia's not there.
Yeah. But I'm looking at in this particular story then, you say winter is failing. That's because Aslan's come as well. Her power is failing now. It's breaking. It's because the deity is showing up and saying, your time is done, witch. Booyah.
Bringing me just a little bit of Wheel of Time here. I feel like Lan walks up to the White Witch and she's not walking away. And that's where anyone good enough with, say, a sword could beat her.
Yeah, there was no one that good with a sword in this series. No one.
No. But it's just something physical that's easy enough to overcome. Is it something that anyone just could easily do? No. But
man, she says, I'll take your sword and I'll turn you into stone. Lan is a statue.
My point here being, I think she is far above being in our bottom category, but I don't think she can hold a candle to the overarching tier of truly being the powerful evil villain. I'd even go so far as to say she's not the worst villain in the Chronicles of Narnia.
Well, she's the one that made our list. All right, we saying tier 2?
That's where I'd put her.
All right, you're keeping track. She's tier 2. Very good. I'm going to jump around on our list. We do have about 16, 17 that we're going to go through here. I'm going to jump to one of Stephen King's contributions to our list.
Okay.
Randall Flagg, the Dark Man. There are multiple names for this character. He appears most prominently in something that, if you're listening to this at the time we've recorded here, he's becoming very well known because CBS is putting out a miniseries, CBS All Access, The Stand. He is the ultimate bad guy on The Stand.
I might need to take a pause for a moment and say, wait, he appears in things that aren't The Stand?
Yes. Stephen King slips him in as the bad guy into a whole bunch of his things, actually. But doesn't use the name Randall Flagg again, but does use the Dark Man. And uses other names that are similar to Randall Flagg. He appears, for example, in the Dark Tower series with the Gunslinger, and I think there's 5 books, 7 books in that series. It's been a while.
Okay.
I've read them all. But he appears as actually multiple characters throughout the books of that series with different names. One time, you only see the character's initials, and they're RF. A couple other times, he has a completely different name, but you can see by the way he acts, the way he's doing, it's the same guy. It's still the Dark Man.
Fair enough.
He is the overarching bad guy in the Dark Tower series. He also appears in a few other of Stephen King's works. The story The Eyes of the Dragon, Hearts in Atlantis, and one that I haven't read yet, Gwendy's Button Box, which Stephen King co-wrote with another author, Richard Kismar.
What a name.
He's the bad guy, and the name there is Richard Ferris. Again, RF.
Yeah.
It's the same basic entity. Let's talk about this entity, though.
I do need to preface this. I don't know a lot about what this entity is going to be because I haven't read a whole lot of Stephen King. A couple things here and there, but not a lot. So I will be relying on you to fill me in a little bit here.
I admit, I've pulled up the wiki on this. This is great. In all the various iterations he shows up, there's a few, that's an interesting name. But listen to this. In addition to Randall Flagg, he's got Russell Faraday, Richard Fannin, Richard Fremantle, Rudin Falaro, Richard Fry, Robert Frank, and Ramsey Forrest.
So if your initials are RF, I'm sorry, apparently you're the devil.
Yes, pretty much. Now, it never says he's the devil, but it does say he is the ultimate dark power. He is a supernatural entity that has influence over animal and human behavior. His ultimate goal is to bring down all that is good. Civilization, good powers, anyone who seems to want to make the world a better place, he's on the other side.
Is it a, rather than making the world a better place, wanting to encourage people to choose to make their own personal gain better, or just tear things down?
He's into tearing things down. He really is. He's portrayed as some sort of demonic entity. He clearly has what might be called magical abilities. He can take different shapes. He can appear as an animal, as a figure, or just as a guy and look like a regular guy. But everything he does is either influencing people to make bad choices, but those who align with him tend to end up with bad endings too. It's not like you side with him and you win. No, you win temporarily, and it always ends badly for the ones that align with him. He's not just trying to see that the powers of darkness win, he wants everything to fall apart. The Stand is a great example because he starts it off with being the one who triggers a plague that takes out nearly the entire population of the planet.
Yeah, oops.
And then he plays around with those who are left, and again tries to pretty much destroy everything else.
So clearly this is a multi-book villain. It is almost more a force rather than, sure, a sentient force, but a force rather than an individual. throughout all these incarnations, is there a defeat, a failure, or are they just, still kicking to cause chaos?
We get the impression that he's not an entity that can be destroyed.
Okay.
It's a matter of sometimes he tends to have more influence and is more successful for periods of time, but other times the forces of good overcome. But it's not like he's gone for good. He's just relegated to waiting in the shadows.
He's overcome for now.
It's going to be a Wheel of Time type cycle. He'll be back. The forces of good must always be vigilant, must always be trying to be the best they can be, so that he can't sink his talons back in and create damage again. So in that sense, where he can both influence what people do, but he can also use his own powers directly at times, and he can't be destroyed because he's more of a force of nature. He is he is, period. He is. I'm seeing tier 1 here.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. In large part because not only does he bring what seems to be one of my personal favorite things, and that's putting a focus on human nature as being the downfall of humanity, but also that he is very incredibly powerful. Like you said, the Stand wiping out most of the human race almost instantly.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some crazy abilities. He can get a person to hallucinate, to hear voices. He could look at someone and say, hey, you, cancer. And the person suddenly is plagued with cancer all over their body. I mean, he can do some nasty stuff.
I feel like what I'm hearing is his biggest limitation really is what is his end goal. And that's that he almost seems to enjoy the process of the suffering better than the end result. He wants to watch people suffer.
And he seeks as one of his greatest goals to corrupt those who are good. Because he can do horrible things to people who are good. But if he can get them to despair and turn to his side, that's even better. And that seems to be an ultimate goal he's always working towards, to turn those who are fighting and resisting against him to give up and come over to his side.
Really, the best counter to him is a relentless, kind heart.
Yeah. Stephen King's novel, The Stand, I think it's the single largest book he ever wrote. The story I remember from The Stand is that it was published twice, because it was published earlier in his career and it was only so big. And then when he got major successful, had a whole bunch of bestsellers, he republished it full size, because now he could publish whatever he wanted and people would buy it. And I've read the full size version and it's awesome, but he wasn't allowed to print something that big the first time around.
I could be horribly wrong here, but a part of my brain wants to feel like I saw on the shelf once you had the smaller version as well, and you had them like right next to each other.
Oh, maybe I did, but I know I have only kept the full-size version.
Yes.
All right.
So, who's next?
Well, just for kicks and giggles to make sure we're doing this right, Randall Flagg would kick the White Witch's butt. 6 Ways to
absolutely.
Sunday, right? Okay. So tier 1 versus tier 2.
If only because the White Witch can die and Randall Flagg maybe can't.
Yeah, I don't think he can. Because in essence, in that universe, good can never overcome with ultimate. Like, they'll never be bad again. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly.
All right, next up. Let's dip into the sci-fi universes with Emperor Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, if you'd like to go. Sidious, sorry. Darth Sidious sounds like a tree.
Yeah, deciduous.
Exactly. Darth Sidious. All right, Emperor Palpatine, who is a Sith Lord who can tap into, with incredible strength, the dark side of the Force in the Star Wars universe. What do you think of this dude?
Now, truthfully, we have to admit a couple of things here. One, technically speaking, this guy is an accomplished swordsman in that he is capable with a lightsaber. That being said, that is not the crux of his power.
No.
I would claim that the next possibly most powerful part of him being the Force, whether through manipulation, choking, it's often a telekinesis, but also having mild telepathy abilities, electrocution, a number of other things here. that, I would say, isn't even his biggest strength either. But rather, his biggest strength, and the reason he is such a big villain, is because he is a master politician.
Yeah, you could make an argument that Palpatine's powers, he has Force powers, those are not his greatest powers. His intellect, his ability to manipulate a situation, to twist the perspectives people have, and to use people as pawns is far greater of ability than his Force powers. But his Force powers are like, wow, what a thing to have in reserve, man.
Mm-hmm. I mean, before he even really unmasks himself, he's already ruling most of the galaxy, and then just decides to say, now I am.
George Lucas could have written Emperor Palpatine as the ultimate force for evil in the galaxy and not have him be a Sith Lord. He could have had no Force powers and done what he did, and simply had Sith warriors working for him. And that's the Force power. He still would have been the biggest, baddest guy in the universe.
Now, for my part in this, I'm taking episodes 1 through 6, because when you throw on the little bit of Palpatine on 9, we get an interesting idea that he is potentially partially immortal, but
it's a clone.
It's also a really, in my opinion, weak thing that focuses on the Force side of Palpatine, which I don't think was his strength.
Should we talk about midichlorians here now? Let's not.
No, that's getting too far in the sci-fi. This is a fantasy podcast.
All right, so he's a master manipulator, a great strategic planner. His Sith powers are part of what, keeps him leaning towards the dark side. He's not using powers for good. He's using them for gain, for personal goals that have nothing to do with what will better the universe. It's about his power and what he wants to press upon everyone. And he's pretty bad, pretty nasty. I'd say he's pretty bad beep, but I don't use that word.
Badass?
Yeah, thank you. It's a generational thing. You can say that. I don't want to say that.
Sure. I mean, he commissions the building of multiple bases that destroy planets.
I mean,
killing
Holy
millions
cow,
or if not billions of people.
If you add up how many souls he snuffed out, wow.
And he is the reason why one of the largest peacekeeping forces, the Jedi in the galaxy, is nearly wiped out.
And then here's a trait he shares with Randall Flagg. Of all the things he does, what does he seem to have as what would bring him the greatest satisfaction? Is to take someone who is a force for good and turn them to the dark side.
Come to the dark side. We have cookies.
All right. We know he's powerful. We see him shooting Force lightning bolts and destroying some of the greatest Jedi around. He takes out, give me the name, Mace Windu. There it is. I got it. He takes out Mace Windu, one of the greatest battle warriors the Jedi had around, in a head-to-head.
Well, no, actually he doesn't.
He does. Because I play his manipulation of others into this.
Okay.
I believe he could have beat Mace Windu one-on-one if he wanted to. He allowed himself to appear weak to turn Anakin Skywalker at the end. He didn't need Anakin. He could have totally used his lightning bolts and zapped Mace Windu from get-go. Why not? Why allow it to look like Mace is going to kill him? To get Anakin to take the last step. That's the master manipulator that Palpatine is.
Meaning he was willing to let himself be horribly scarred and disfigured by his own lightning to do that.
He doesn't care what he looks like.
I'll buy it, actually.
Where do we see him going after the women? Never.
Plenty of times. What are you talking about? That's a major subplot.
No, that's Jabba the Hutt with the women.
Okay.
Not Palpatine. You're getting that mixed up.
Okay. But there are a number of key weaknesses I want to bring up here.
Okay. Falling.
And that...
Falling is apparently a weakness?
Yes. Largely, it's that he is a little bit too mortal. He's just a man.
Except what you said we're not going to talk about shows that his Force entity existence is still there.
I like to pretend that doesn't exist.
We see that with all the Jedi, though. When they die, they're not gone. They've become luminescent beings of life, one with the Force.
My inclination and thought process here, though, is truthfully, he's a politician, he's manipulative, he's powerful, but he's still going to age and die. He's attempting to build an empire, and if he can find a way to manipulate things and make clones and put himself into it or whatever and live on, he will, but there's no guarantee on that. He's just a guy.
Yeah, man, here's a harsh reality. Disney owns Star Wars now. They're retconning everything. Because all the Star Wars novels, one of the things you learn is that's exactly what Palpatine's plan was. He created eternal life for himself by making all these clones so that his Force spirit would just move to the next one when he's dead. That's all gone. None of that exists now.
Now instead it's eternal Force ghost stuff.
It's. I know there are some people so excited that Disney took over Star Wars. And I get that in that George Lucas kind of went off the deep end on how he started writing some of this stuff. So they were like, yay, we're saved, and Lucas won't write anymore. But then Disney got rid of all the great stuff other authors like Timothy Zahn had put out there already. Good stuff, man.
However, when all is said and done, where I stand here is Emperor Palpatine did some incredibly bad things. He also wasn't entirely a bad guy. This is a little controversial to say, because the Empire was bad, oppressive, evil. It also brought a certain sense of stability that in the decline of the Empire, when the Emperor is defeated, is lacking. While it may not have been so much a benefit at the time, it was something that was lacking afterwards.
What tier are we putting this dude at? Tier 1 or tier 2?
2. He doesn't get 1.
No?
Not for me. Which hurts me a little bit to say.
His powers are, they're super out there, man. They're something. But he's not eternal. Too mortal to be tier 1?
Not only is he too mortal, his ideas are.
All right. They're too...
His legacy will be forgotten and replaced with something else.
They're too shallow. All right, tier 2. He's definitely not tier 3. He's deserving.
Or at least he is to us nerds.
Yeah, Palpatine would whip the White Witch.
Yeah.
All right, she's now tier 2B.
But they also share a lot of similarities.
All right.
They share similar traits.
Okay, so we were thinking this would be a shorter episode. Yeah, it's not. There's no way this is going to be a shorter episode.
This is going to be longer.
In fact, as we've been talking, I've been crossing off ones off our list because there's no way we can talk about all these anymore. But this is fun. I'm enjoying this. Let's take one of the listener contributor ones. We'll give a shout out to Carrick for giving us this one. I know he'll listen, so he'll hear it. Chernabog. Most people listening are going, who? Chernabog is the absolute entity figure of evil in the Disney universe. You guys are all familiar with the great evil of the Disney universe.
You mean Walt? Oops.
That was not nice, man. We owe Walt a lot.
I'm sitting here loving Disney.
You love
I grew up on
Disneyland,
Disney.
man. Come on.
It's great. I also think it's going to outlive everyone because it's Grady.
Disney has so many stories and movies, classic movies, and they all have, many of them are very formulaic, but they have the good guy, they have the bad guy. And in almost all of them, the bad guy's an idiot. But he shares, he's greedy, he's selfish, but he's not evil incarnate. There's a few of the classic Disney tales where the evil gets a little grittier. One that comes to mind right away for me is The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Yeah, it's my favorite Disney movie, actually.
Is it? Wow.
Because of that grittiness.
And he's dark. The what was he? Archbishop, Cardinal, whatever he was. He was dark. Another of the grittier ones is actually, and he's kind of a comic character, but man, he's a bad dude, is in Tarzan.
Kerchak.
Yeah. He's just not a nice guy. No, not Kerchak. He's an ape.
That's not the right name.
I'm talking about the guy who's the hunter. I forget his name right now.
It also starts with the C, I want to say.
But he's just not nice. And then you could go to Aladdin. Jafar is an evil dude.
I feel for Jafar.
But
Jafar was trying to do good things,
but
kind of.
and then we get further down into the darkness. I'll bring up the Black Cauldron.
Which, interestingly, was originally a fantasy book series that I read when I was younger.
Yes.
Black Cauldron is the second book.
And the evil entity there, he's bad. He's bad, but Chernabog, whole next level. We first see him in the Disney universe in Fantasia. Just in a segment of Fantasia where he is just this, he kind of looks like more than a gargoyle. He is this dark shape, and he's like the devil. He's Satan. He's evil incarnate. And then he pops up in a few other uses that Disney goes with. But that's where he gets his known. And when you look at him, you go, oh, he's bad. He's evil.
It's like Disney actually decided they wanted to try and scare people, and they didn't think they did a good enough job with the creepy hag lady in Snow White, because I'll be honest, that still scares me. She's creepy.
But Chernabog, man, he is evil incarnate. That's what Disney was going for. That's how we view him. Like I said, Fantasia, but he also just shows up anytime Disney wants to really have evil. Mm-hmm. They show an image of this guy or another version of this guy. He never does a lot. You don't see a lot of him because Disney is happy and yay, and let's go play with Mickey, but he's evil.
Now, I'll give him his credit. My favorite attraction, not so much ride, but show at Disneyland, Fantasmic, does feature him. And I always thought it was a really cool thing. And being a kid of my generation rather than yours, at first I didn't know where he was from. I was just like, he's scary. Cool. However, I'm personally inclined to put a little bit lower tier for him, simply because Disney doesn't use him often enough.
Yeah, he's too dark for Disney to use all the time. But that very darkness, where do we put him? We don't know a lot about his powers other than just, again, they're implied. He's evil incarnate. So whatever is dark and evil, he can do. He's eternal. He's another one of these entities. You're not going to be able to kill Chernabog.
I'm going to offer a subcategory.
When nothing fits, let's make another one. This is called waffling.
No, this is kind of my 2.5 tier in that.
Oh, well, way down there, 2.5. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing.
Ouch. Sorry, Carrick. 2.5 for your guy.
To me, he could easily be a 2. He could maybe be a 1 if we knew anything more about him.
There's not enough.
But
all right.
He doesn't get the screen time to be worth much more. When most people hear a name and go, who? It means he didn't do a very good job of being evil enough.
Yeah. All right. 2.5. All right. Next one up. Very appropriate to what we are currently covering. I mean, we would be very remiss if we did not bring up the Dark One from the Wheel of Time.
This one is going to have some controversy between us, I think.
Is it?
I think so.
I pictured the Dark One as a hands-down Tier 1 entity, and let me tell you why. The Dark One is, and I'm going to use your own words to kind of convict you on this one.
Okay.
He is the equal of the Creator, practically, and perhaps is the Creator.
There we go. Thank you.
But he is an eternal entity that is on the outside of the Wheel of Time, wants in, can't get in because the Creator barred him from it, and yet still is influencing what's happening inside the creation. He is reaching his tendrils in by corrupting people and causing all sorts of havoc and bad and evil things to happen. You cannot kill the Dark One. That is 100% emphasized in the Wheel of Time series. You can perhaps defeat him for a time, but you cannot kill him. Killing him would destroy everything.
Yeah, because it does get considered.
Yeah, so I'll back up on that. You can't kill him.
It does seem possible.
You can kill him if you're suicidal and you want everything gone, which one character wants. We won't spoil that yet.
We see that it seems the place of the Dark One must be filled. The Dark One could be killed, but his place in the universe needs to be filled.
But he fits this archetype of being that entity of evil that is necessary for there to be good. You can't have good if there isn't evil, because it's not good if it's all there is. Now, that's a whole level of philosophical conversation we could go into, but I know we're kind of on the same page on that one. To have good, you must have the contrast.
I agree with you on that, and that's where we won't go too deep on that part. Here's where I'm going to bring some controversy.
All right, lay it on me. Lay it on us. Every listener is waiting with bated breath.
The Dark One doesn't really do anything.
Disagree.
No.
And I'll prove why I disagree, but go ahead.
Well, I'll keep going here.
Make your case.
The Dark One absolutely influences, grants power, corrupts, things like that. And we see a lot of effects from the Dark One. But throughout the series, if you want to say Shadow Spawn are because of him, well, Shadow Spawn are loyal to him to an extent and are from his evilness, but also one of his Forsaken, or multiple, made them. The Forsaken exist to serve the Dark One. They are granted his power, but they also have their own schemes and agendas and free will, kind of. And even if you want to go to the extent that maybe Shadar Haran is an extension of the Dark One, it's a little bit implied that it's not exactly the Dark One, but rather his hand. It's a role that doesn't allow him fully in the world, nor is it his doing things.
Oh man, no, I have to disagree with you on that one. His hand, Shidar Haran, is the Dark One, personified.
But I'm fairly certain Shadar Haran does not claim to be the Dark One. Considers himself above the Forsaken, but still below the Dark One. He considers himself a separate entity.
But he is as much as the Dark One can be in the world. That's it.
Exactly. That's my thing. He's as much as the Dark One can be in the world. The Dark One can't really be in the world.
But then you have Shidar Haran and you have Puppet, and they're the same thing. He is pure and simple. He has no will of his own. He has the Dark One's will, period. So it's like the Dark One is playing a video game, and this is his
Avatar?
Avatar. Actually, I think they use that term in the Wheel of Time series. He is the Dark One's avatar.
I differ a little bit in that.
Man, I'll have to show you that quote. He is the Dark One's avatar. He is the Dark One.
I think there's a level of separation between the two that makes a distinction enough to say, and this is where I really get here, I will stand with you and say, partially because I love it, and I think he is a great entity of villainy. However, I don't think he's necessarily the best written or best villain in the Wheel of Time. I think there are better villains that serve him, but are more compelling.
Yeah, man, except the other villains that serve him, they're also human, with their own petty goals, and Shidar Haran is above that.
Well, I'd argue, Padan Fane is potentially a more compelling villain.
That's a whole nother level.
Because it's
That's
more
different.
Interesting.
Yeah, okay. But we're not talking about interesting. We're talking about power.
So I will sit here and say, I'll put him on tier 1. But if I had to compare he and Randall Flagg, from what I know, Randall Flagg wins. Because they have a lot of the similar corruption power.
It's pretty close to a draw for me there.
But Randall Flagg, we see him directly and intentionally affecting the world a lot more, whereas the Dark One seems to be more inclined to let chaos just be.
You know, the Dark One's pseudonym is Ricky Fortuna.
Is it really? They're the same being? Psych, okay. Dark One, Randall Flagg, it's all the same person.
The Dark One, the Dark Man, come on, it's pretty close there.
But clearly he's a tier 1.
Moving on. Wow, we have so many good ones that we could jump to. I'm going to jump to one of the less good ones.
Okay.
Because it's another fan contributed. Sorry, fans. This fan happens to be one that I'm married to.
Oh, hey, it's Mom.
And she doesn't tend to listen, so if it gets bashed a little bit, it's probably okay.
What are you talking about? I love her submission.
Oh, it's good fun. Cruella de Vil.
Cruella de Vil.
Cruella de Vil. Oh, wait, how many bars can we sing before we get in trouble with copyright? I think we're okay. I think we're okay.
Maybe it's Disney.
And we already gave Disney all the free plugs with Chernabog, so come on.
Yeah, but I also dissed them, so...
Cruella de Vil, the villain of 101 Dalmatians, and I think she comes back for 102 Dalmatians, though no one should ever watch that.
She's also in the live-action version of 101 Dalmatians.
Yes. Cruella de Vil, I have to admit, it was years before I went, oh, that's witty, cruel devil. I get it. Ha ha ha. It never crossed my mind.
So me as a child figured this out before you did?
Sad, isn't it? But it was such a comic character. Now, Cruella de Vil, at her core, is a very selfish, self-interested, I care about nothing except what I want kind of character.
Oh yeah, don't get me wrong. She's evil. She wants to kill puppies.
Ouch.
For a coat.
I won't go that she's evil.
I'm sorry, she wants to kill puppies.
I don't care that DeVille, you can find evil in those words. No, sorry, because you want to kill puppies to get their fur doesn't make you evil. It makes you a bad person. That's not evil. That's a bad person. She's a very bad person. Very selfish, very uncaring. PETA hates her. I don't know if I can say they hate her. Hate is, again, a harsh word for a group that cares about animals.
Sure.
But evil is different. I don't think she's out there for the grand scheme of destroying all creation. No.
See, here's the thing. If she wanted to kill the puppies to make a coat, to make a profit, I'd say she's a bad person. But she wants to kill puppies to make a coat for herself.
She likes unique fur. She loves spots. It's just who she is.
Therefore, I say it's not that she's bad and has these horrible ill intentions, but rather, no, at her core, she's rotten. She is evil in going through that.
Oh, not evil.
I'm pulling it out.
Not evil. Petty, selfish, misguided,
Now,
very unpleasant. Not evil.
I will be fair to say, if there's an actual real person who is like Cruella de Vil, I don't actually think they're evil, but that's because totally separate topic. I'm not entirely sure the idea of evil exists, but in fantasy it does.
Okay, her powers are intimidation and money. She's tier 0.5.
That's the wrong way. Tier 0.5 would be above 0.1 or
no,
above
0.5,
1.
0.5. You're a math guy. Come on. 0.5 is below 1.
Exactly. If 1 is the top and 3 is the bottom, 0.5 would be better.
Wow, I totally mixed that one around. Sorry.
I'm the math guy.
3.5. Maybe I should have set the tiers up the other direction, I guess.
It's a ranking system. It's football season. You should be better at seeds.
She's a 3.5. She's not good enough to be tier 3.
No, she's fun. She's mean. She's at the bottom.
All right, we have talked about Cruella de Vil enough. Let's move to another one. I'm going to merge two of these.
Okay.
I'm going to first mention the Borg from Star Trek.
Okay.
Resistance is futile, accept this. But I'm going to lump in with the Borg all artificial intelligence. AI.
We admit that doing this probably unfair to plenty of AI, but to an extent, it's the same idea.
I mean, we've got Skynet from the Terminator series. We've got The Matrix. Thank you, Wachowski brothers. We've got iRobot. Thank you, Mr. Asimov. We've got all sorts of things. We've got Ultron from the Marvel Universe, Avengers. Any technology that becomes self-aware. I'm not sure the Borg started out as technology. I think they started out as creatures that started becoming cyborgy, and then the tech took over. And now they are tech-driven. But this is a bad guy. Any artificial intelligence. So what do you think?
I like that you brought up Asimov, because that's really the start of this sort of thing. But that even goes so far as to it being inspired by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The idea of a creation becoming something that is a bane to the creator.
I think that matches with all the things I described. Yeah. Wow, I would not have lumped the Frankenstein monster in with that, but I see it. I get it.
I'm fairly certain Frankenstein was the distant inspiration for Isaac Asimov.
Yeah, but he's not tech at all. But still, totally get that there's a parallel that makes sense. The creation becoming self-aware and doing its own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Cool.
But it's kind of the actual scariest to me because it's the most possible to me. A lot of the things that we see, these great evils, are pure fantasy, even if they are science fiction. But the idea that we could one day create something that destroys ourselves, becomes self-aware, and doesn't like what it sees is possible. I'm not comfortable with that. And if the robot overlords are listening, I'm on your side.
It's going to be Amazon's bots. We'll all start receiving packages we didn't order. And when we try to reply, this is a mistake, they'll say, no, it isn't. Enjoy it. We have your money.
I mean, it's valid.
Anyways, there's great powers in AI because as technology has shifted to where we are now, we rely on this for so much. There's so much that we do out there that's just generated by tech. We now have the ability, and this is freaky scary, for technology out there to create artificial people so that you could communicate with a company that you have a question about and you're talking to artificial intelligence and you have no freaking idea. It's actually responding to what you say, and it's dynamically adjusting to your questions in a manner, and even over the phone, hearing a voice that sounds like a person. It's all been programmed, but it's adaptive now, so there's not much difference from talking with a real person. In fact, it might be better in some points than that person at a call center at 2 a.m. over in a different part of the world who's talking to you reading from a script.
These things may still be limited, but it's not inconceivable.
Where do we put this? Where does artificial intelligence fall when we consider all the powers of some of these creatures we've been doing? I'd say, in some ways we could go, ooh, this is more dangerous because this is closer to real.
I would put this into a tier 1.
Okay.
For one big reason, and that's that so far our tier 1s are things that are corruptive. That some of their biggest power is in making villains out of people. And when I look at AI, truthfully, people are the villains in their attempt to make something that they make a mistake and create this.
One of the greatest powers / dangers of artificial intelligence is when it determines it is doing the best thing it can by eradicating human life.
Yeah.
And you can't fault it because human life is destroying so much around itself. It goes, I have coding and programming to make things as good as possible, and my programming tells me clearly getting rid of humans will accomplish that. Whoa. And you can't argue with it. It's true, at that point.
They're not wrong. We just don't like it.
No.
Therefore, they're a tier 1 villain. They're not necessarily evil, but they're tier 1.
Right. Not evil at all, I'd say. In any of these cases, they're not evil because they're beyond good and evil. They're logical.
All right. Next up.
All right. Let's go for one that I know won't be tier 1. Voldemort. Okay. From our Harry Potter series.
Why don't you think he'll be tier 1?
'Cause, man, no. I just can't elevate anything from the Harry Potter series to tier 1. I just can't.
See, that frustrates me a little bit.
Okay, make your case.
For 2 reasons. One, what do you have against Harry Potter? You read it to me as I'm a baby sitting with you.
Oh, I love the Harry Potter series, but it's in a different category. It just doesn't have the same depth and gravitas of many of the other things we've spent time with.
I think that's potentially true. However, because of it, I think we would be remiss not to recognize what Harry Potter did for fantasy as a genre. And it really made it a lot more mainstream than it had been previously.
But he was also defeated by a teenager.
No, he was defeated by love.
Oh, that's so much better then, yes. Voldemort, in the end, has such a shallow weakness that I'm like, no, that's sad. That's just so sad.
Truthfully, Voldemort gets defeated through a number of trial, error, and unfortunate coincidence. He shouldn't have lost. He only did because he chose to use a wand that should have been unbeatable, but didn't actually belong to him, because he messed it up.
So he was not as smart as he thought he was. That's a pretty big weakness.
He didn't follow the connections. He definitely was overconfident.
He was a flawed human being who had learned some amazing powers, but his personal flaws caused him to fail.
Well, and this is where I will put him a solid tier 2. He's a human being. I mean, he transcends that to an extent here and there. He's a wizard. He has Horcruxes and splits his soul. He's not exactly human anymore, but when it comes down to it, his strengths and his weaknesses are often driven from who he is as a person.
Okay. Tier 2, huh? I guess I'll have to give him tier 2. I mean, he's got some pretty strong magic powers.
I mean, when I compare with the White Witch and Emperor Palpatine, he fits there.
His weaknesses and how he's ultimately defeated make him kind of wimpy, in my opinion. But I'll give him 2. Maybe in my personal mental canon, he's 2B. But all right, we'll put him there. I think we'll just get a couple more in here, maybe, or we don't talk about them as long. We would be so out of bounds if we didn't bring Tolkien into this in some manner. So let's talk about Sauron from The Lord of the Rings. And I almost went, maybe we should talk about Morgoth. Because Morgoth was Sauron's boss back in the day, if you go to the Silmarillion. And he was so much more powerful.
Yeah.
But Sauron, of course, is who we get to spend a lot more time with in The Lord of the Rings. So that's who we'll take. The ultimate bad guy of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and he's actually even there in The Hobbit. We don't know that's who it is, but he is referenced. He's there. He gets a lot more screen time if you watch The Hobbit trilogy. I can't believe they made 3 movies out of that, but nevertheless.
Great book, too many movies.
Yeah.
Too much Orlando Bloom.
If you've never read the book and you just watch The Hobbit trilogy, entertaining flick. But if you're comparing it to what the Hobbit literature was, you're left unsatisfied and frustrated.
I feel really bad. I love Tolkien.
Yes.
I don't love Sauron as a villain.
Now, try to block from your mind how Sauron is portrayed in the movies.
I am. I mean, if we talk through, say, Silmarillion even.
Yeah.
Sauron, more or less, is a lackey to a better villain, and then rises from the ashes, which is commendable and amazing, and then goes on to be very shady, manipulative, incredibly clever, and then fails.
Let me paint another picture for you. In the scheme of the world Tolkien created, Sauron is the equivalent of Gandalf. They are the same level of creature. Okay?
In the full scheme of things, yes.
They are the same level. That said, look at what Gandalf and his fellow wizards can accomplish, and look at what Sauron manages to do, and the level of damage and evil that he drives.
You know very well that that is not a fair comparison, because you know for a fact that the wizards are intentionally limited. They go without the knowledge of what they are and how to do everything, and have only a minor portion of their power.
No, they have their power. They don't have the knowledge of their power.
Therefore, they cannot use it. It is not in their scope.
But we've talked a lot already about power being not just the magical abilities.
Fair.
But what you can do in manipulating or influencing. 2 different words for the same thing. Influencing being a positive use, manipulating being a more negative use of making other people do what you want them to do. Sauron, through his influence/manipulation, brings down the whole nation of Numenor, destroys that. He doesn't use his magic to do it. He doesn't have to. He speaks words into the rulers and gets them jealous and greedy and destroys that whole island country. And, he ends up also kind of paying a price and ends up being more spirit than flesh. But he was willing to pay that price, a la Palpatine. He was willing to take personal damage to accomplish his goals. Then he goes to Middle-earth, and now he's a shadow of what he was physically, and yet still has massive influence and can have impact on how people look at what they do. So you've got all sorts of creatures in Middle-earth, from men to orcs to trolls, who are influenced to move for evil because of him whispering in their ears, because of him influencing what would be best for them. The wizards have the same power to influence, to speak, and yet they don't get nearly the same effect. Yeah. Now, in the end, we can say, well, they had the biggest effect because Sauron dies. He's crushed. He's destroyed. Uh-oh. I maybe just put a ding in my own arguments because Sauron is destroyed in the end.
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to say about Sauron. Love him. He's awful. He's a cockroach. A very efficient, manipulative cockroach that gets things done, but it's more he refuses to die. Every time you think you got him, he'll come back. Enough that it's almost not believable when he does eventually die. It's like, but did he really? And I think that's a point to him. I don't think he's the most powerful of our villains on our lists. And at a casual read, I'd even say he's not the best written villain. However, when you take the full knowledge of the Silmarillion backstory, figuring this out, not just how it's presented in the narrative, the character is much more interesting and deserving and does have his place and power. So as a character, I put him in the tier 1, and I think we'd be remiss to put Tolkien much of anywhere else. But
Tolkien would get back out of his grave and slap us both ways to Sunday.
But on a casual read, I find I care about the effects, his troops, Sauron, but Sauron, he's just kind of the enigmatic bad guy.
So you're feeling this need to make him 1.5.
I comfortably put him in 1. I just have to acknowledge that I think if you just read the trilogy, that's probably biased.
Yeah, you need to take the whole picture in. But yeah, okay. Kind of as a point of wrap up, we're going to just throw in 2 more real quick.
Okay.
And they have some similarities. First, Thread. Thread is the entity that is the greatest threat in Anne McCaffrey's The Dragon Riders of Pern series. This living entity that falls from the sky and consumes all that it touches, any living matter that it touches. What do you think?
Sorry, I was
Trying not to sneeze?
feel like I need to sneeze, yeah.
Zach still has his cold from the last episode. Sorry. Now, it's easy for him to still have his cold because we're doing this on the same day we did our last episode. I just gave away one of the mythos of our podcast, but there you
Shocker. It's been a long time since I've read Dragon Riders of Pern.
Okay.
I don't remember a whole lot.
Basically, take a virus, make it bigger than microscopic, and there you go. And it falls from the sky, and it consumes. It doesn't... Okay, virus is a bad term.
It's more corrosive in its destruction.
But there is a scientific foundation for Thread. It's an actual living organism.
Yeah.
And it eats. And what it eats is any organic matter. So when it comes across from the other place, the other spatial entity in the sky, when it gets close, it crosses the gap and falls on Pern. It's bad. It consumes.
I think that this one, with its lack of sentience, is valid as a threat.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that this one operates... Because I don't think you need sentience to be a villain, per se. And we'll get to that, I think. But Thread, I think, is a compelling problem, natural disaster, but doesn't really have a place as a villain.
So you're saying tier 3, the bottom tier.
If he's on this list, or it's on this list...
I put him in the list, so he has to be somewhere in the tiers. That's how it works.
I would just argue that it's very much a problem, but it's not like the others. It doesn't belong as a villain.
Thread is totally... Morals don't apply, because it has no sentience. Can it really be a bad guy if all it's doing is what it exists to do?
Well, not only it can't be a bad guy for that, but also it's not exactly a physical... Yes, it's physical.
Very physical.
But it's not exactly a, recognizable, always seeable target.
Yeah, you haven't read this in a while, that's for sure.
No, what I'm trying to... Where I think you're going next... I say that one does get a place.
It's funny.
As a villain.
As he says that, we have 4 left on our list, and he's sure where I'm going next, and I'm going to tell you he's right, which is hilarious, because apparently we are in sync in ways it's shocking.
I think that one will have a place as a villain, whereas this one doesn't, and I think it's because you can throw up a figurehead, almost a straw man, to be this villain, but with Thread, it's more phenomenon. You can't throw up a body or a person and be, this is the personification of it.
Thread, as a threat, is the transformative instrument of the Pern series.
Yeah.
Without Thread, there's nothing to read. There's no point. None of it. And it is a constant threat all the way through. It has been a few years since I finished it. I think they maybe finally eradicate the threat at the end. But it takes like 15 books. But still, in a way, you could say there's an innocence to it. It's just being.
It doesn't, as far as I remember, really adapt, change.
No, not at all.
It's not going to evolve from the level of threat. It just is very threatening as it is.
Yep. All right, tier 3. All right, last one. The zombie horde.
And that's where I was pretty sure you were going.
But more significantly, the virus that creates these zombies and turns them into hordes of zombies that are out there for the purpose of replication, of taking over, of consuming all that it can.
Zombies are prevalent throughout this genre and become almost a subgenre of themselves.
Zombie apocalypse, dude! Yeah!
Be it from Walking Dead to World War Z or so many other things that I could reference.
The extinction cycle... oh man, there's so many good ones that I've read.
If it's viewed as a virus, which it's not always, but often zombies are put a science fiction spin of being a virus. It shares many traits with Thread. Where I go, they deserve to be called a villain, is because when you think about zombies and are looking at zombies, it's the bodies. It's this mass. It is an actual thing that is coming towards you. It doesn't exactly have sentience, but it seems to have more sentience. It has an intention, even if that intention is just to seek out and feed. Does that make sense?
There's some interesting things here. I've read a lot of different zombie novels. It's a genre that I actually do enjoy. I'm not sure why, but I do. Okay, there's 2 particular series for zombie apocalypse that I definitely want to give a shout out. If you want to hear about how zombie hordes and the virus can be a massive, incredible, powerful villain. One of them is the Arisen series. And there's a whole bunch of those. They definitely favor the military side of combating the zombie apocalypse. But to see how the zombie horde is just merciless, implacable, and unstoppable. And I won't ruin it. You're going to have to read it to see what happens or if the world perishes because of the zombie apocalypse.
Sweet, thank you, because I haven't read it.
Oh, man. Michael Stephen Fuchs is the author, and it is a ride. Oh my goodness, it's exactly the kind of book you can't stop reading. And there are, how many? 11? No, it's more than that. 13, 14 books, but it's a rush all the way through. So definitely recommend that. The other series that I strongly recommend that you take a look at is called the Zombie Fallout series. Now this is written by Mark Tufo, and it features a character named Michael Talbot. For those of you that are horror fans, you go, Talbot? Wait, like Lawrence Talbot, who became the Wolfman? Well, that becomes very funny, because the Zombie Fallout series follows Michael Talbot, a character, as he enters the zombie apocalypse. But the same character is used to write the Lycan Fallout series, which features werewolves, but is still involved with the zombie apocalypse. And in the Zombie Fallout series, vampires play a role. And the 2 different directions they go is very entertaining. I enjoy them. In the Zombie Fallout series, the zombies are caused by a virus, but the virus is sentient. The virus is created, sort of, by people. They cause the zombie apocalypse, but they cause it by discovering this sentient virus sort of thing. It's an interesting twist to it. It doesn't play a big role in it, but the virus is definitely out to do what it wants to do. And humans just kind of pave the path, and then it gets out of control. In each of the zombie horde movies, books, whatever you mentioned, World War Z, for example, and all the other ones, the zombies have a will of their own in the end. And they are unstoppable. It's almost universal that the zombies win. People may survive, but they never get back to the way it was.
It's never the same.
The zombies win, and the zombies are still there in some manner. I mean, I think in World War Z, don't the zombies eventually kind of die out?
World War Z, they kind of find a way to vaccinate people from the zombies, and then the zombies aren't a problem anymore.
Yeah, but that's relatively rare.
Cold weather also is a problem.
So what do we think about zombie horde, the zombie virus? Where do we put this?
I think it shares similarities with Thread, while also, especially in that Zombie Fallout series, having kind of some similarities to the AI, in that it's a created thing, kind of. Reaching the two of those things together, while it creates a massive subgenre, without focusing on any specific singular zombie series, I'd have to only put it at tier 2.
I can live with tier 2. They're pretty nasty and pretty powerful, pretty overwhelming of anything that tries to stand in its way, but it doesn't have that level of power. And I mean, if you've got big enough guns and big enough arsenal, you can stomp the zombies. Whereas our tier 1 entities, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what you got. You can't stop. In some cases, you can't even end them. There is no way to end them.
I mean, there are some that get ended or could be in our tier 1, but the candidates for first place in tier 1, I would say, would be between Randall Flagg and the Dark One. And arguably, we're not sure if those are different entities.
Let's wrap up our episode here by reading off again the entire list of tier 1 baddies. What do we have?
In tier 1, we have Randall Flagg, the Dark One, Artificial Intelligence, and Sauron.
Okay, so perhaps we should agree that Randall Flagg in Robert Jordan's universe appears as the Dark One. Same entity.
Sure.
And in a different universe creates artificial intelligence. Because why wouldn't he?
I look forward to seeing that as a novel at some point.
And they all ignore Sauron because he's too old.
Sauron's in tier 1 because honorable mention.
Okay. All right, I'm good with that.
That wraps up our quote-unquote battle of the baddies.
And I think we're going to really say the baddest of the baddies is Randall Flagg / Dark One. That sense of entity is the baddest. Rules them all.
Being able to be a dark, corruptive force that is infinite, unending, and truly powerful in your own right as well puts you above the rest, especially if you can be well written.
Absolutely. And Robert Jordan, Stephen King, masters of their craft. Hard to argue with what they've created. All right, well, this has been an interesting diversion.
It has.
Yeah, I had fun with that. Thanks for engaging with all of this, Zach. This has been good.
Well, thanks for coming up with the idea.
I look forward to seeing what our fans come up with to throw in here saying, how did you not talk about this guy? Or whatever.
If they disagree with us, feel free to come at us. We would love to have some discourse over this and hear what you think the proper rankings should be.
And especially if they have someone else from a different series that they want to put forward saying, no. This one would kick the butt of the Dark One / Randall Flagg. Tell us who wrote him, tell us why. Make your case. Email us or send it on social media. We'd love to hear about it and perhaps learn something else we need to be reading. All right. Anything else for today, Zach? I think that pretty much does it.
That does it for me as well.
Hope you've enjoyed. Again, as usual, we encourage you to stay connected with us. Find us on social media. Send us emails at fantasyfortheages@gmail.com. If you're really into enjoying what we're doing, we'd love to have your support on Patreon. All these options and opportunities are located in our show notes, and we'll leave you there. Until our next episode, we'll talk to you next time.